They sent an SOS to allies. The Deathworlders showed up instead. The crystalline spires of New Thessia gleamed like frozen lightning against the amber sky, their surfaces reflecting the panic that gripped the city below. Ambassador Liralai of the Asari Republic stood at the viewing deck of the Central Command Tower, watching as streams of civilian transports fled the capital. Her elegant blue features were etched with worry as she pressed her palm against the cool, transparent steel window. "The Reapers broke through the outer defense grid 20 minutes ago," reported Commander Victus, his mandibles clicking with barely contained stress. The Turian officer's armor bore fresh scorch marks from the morning's failed counterattack. "Our fleets are scattered. The Solarians have already pulled back to the Citadel. And the Quarian flotilla is requesting immediate evacuation routes." Liralai closed her eyes, feeling the weight of an entire civilization pressing down on her shoulders. 3,000 years of Asari culture, philosophy, and art could be reduced to ash within hours if they couldn't find a miracle. The Reaper forces had appeared without warning, their massive dreadnoughts emerging from dark space like harbingers of extinction. "What about the council races?" she asked, though she already knew the answer from Victus's expression. "The Solarian Union is fortifying their core worlds. The Turian hierarchy is engaged on 17 different fronts. The humans—" Victus paused, his scarred face showing reluctant respect. "The humans are fighting tooth and nail for Earth, but they're outnumbered 10 to 1. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Humanity, the newest member of the galactic community, had proven themselves time and again to be fierce warriors. Yet even their legendary stubbornness couldn't overcome the mathematical certainty of the Reaper invasion." A soft chime echoed through the command center as Lieutenant Talizora approached, her environmental suit's visor reflecting the holographic displays around them. "Ambassador, we've received responses to our distress calls." Liralai turned, hope flickering in her chest. "The Alliance?" "Negative. Admiral Anderson confirms they cannot spare any ships. The Normandy and what remains of the Fifth Fleet are defending the Sol system." Tali's voice carried the strain of sleepless nights spent coordinating desperate evacuation efforts. "However, we did receive acknowledgement from unexpected sources." The Quarian engineer activated a holographic communication array, and several alien faces materialized in the blue-tinted display. The first was clearly Batarian, his 4 eyes gleaming with predatory calculation. Behind him, Liralai could make out the distinctive tusks and mohawk of a Krogan warlord. "This is Balak of the Batarian hegemony," the 4-eyed alien spoke with surprising civility. "We understand your predicament. Our fleets are already engaged with Reaper forces near Karshan, but we can spare a squadron of heavy cruisers." The transmission flickered to show a massive Krogan in battle-worn armor, his scarred hide telling stories of countless conflicts. "Rex here. Tuchanka may be a wasteland, but it breeds tough sons and daughters. My clans can offer 300 warriors and whatever ships still fly." "Every bit helps," Liralai replied gratefully, though her tactical mind was already calculating the grim mathematics. Even with Batarian ships and Krogan ground forces, they were still facing impossible odds. As if sensing her thoughts, Tali highlighted an anomalous reading on her Omni tool. "Ambassador, there's something else. We received an automated response to our general distress beacon from a system we don't recognize. The signature doesn't match any known council race or even terminus systems." Victus frowned, his mandibles twitching. "Pirates? Mercenaries looking to profit from the chaos?" "I don't think so," Tali replied, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The response was strange. It just said, "Help is coming. Prepare for unconventional arrival. The transmission origin point is from somewhere in the Perseus arm, but the exact coordinates are masked." Lyrelay felt a chill that had nothing to do with the command center's temperature. The Perseus arm was largely unexplored, considered too dangerous for most species due to its unstable stellar formations and reports of aggressive fauna on its few habitable worlds. What kind of civilization could thrive in such hostile territory? Time until the Reapers reach the inner colonies? She asked, pushing her concerns aside. 4 hours, maybe 5, Victus replied grimly. They're taking their time, harvesting as they advance. Standard Reaper protocol, maximum psychological impact before the final assault. The viewing deck shuddered as another wave of refugees launched from the spaceport below. These weren't just civilians. Lyrelay could see entire families of Asari, their children clinging to ancient artifacts and precious memories. Each transport carried fragments of their civilization to uncertain safety among the stars. Her contemplation was interrupted by an urgent alarm. Tali's Omni-tool lit up like a firework display, data streams cascading across multiple windows simultaneously. "What is it?" Lyrelay demanded. "Mass relay activation," Tali reported, her voice tight with confusion. "But not from any of our expected allies. The energy signature is... I've never seen anything like this. It's using the relay network, but somehow bypassing the normal entry protocols." On the tactical display, a cluster of unknown contacts materialized near the Thessia relay. The signatures were unlike anything in the galactic database, larger than most dreadnoughts, yet moving with the agility of frigates. Their energy outputs were off the charts, and their hull configurations defied conventional starship design principles. "Identify yourselves," Commander Victus transmitted on all frequencies. "This is Turian Command Authority requesting immediate identification." The response came in accented but perfectly understandable galactic standard. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Indomitable, acting as fleet coordinator for the Terran Expeditionary Force. We received your distress call and are here to provide assistance." Lyrelay and Victus exchanged puzzled looks. "Terran," Lyrelay spoke into the comm. "Are you affiliated with the Human Systems Alliance?" A pause. Then what sounded suspiciously like laughter. "Negative, Ambassador. We're from Earth, but a very different Earth than the one your databases know about. We're what you might call distant cousins." The main viewing screen shifted to show the approaching fleet in detail. Lyrelay's breath caught in her throat. These weren't ships in any traditional sense. They were floating fortresses, their hulls scarred and reinforced like the carapaces of enormous insects. Weapon ports bristled from every surface, and their engines burned with an intense blue-white flame that seemed to bend light around it. "How many vessels in your fleet?" Victus asked, his tactical mind already working. "Current expedition consists of 12 heavy assault carriers, 36 battlecruisers, 72 destroyers, and approximately 300 support vessels," Captain Chen replied with military precision, "plus auxiliary forces currently in cryo-sleep. Total personnel count is roughly 2 million. The command center fell silent. 2 million soldiers arriving from an unknown corner of the galaxy, claiming to be human, but possessing technology that defied every known principle of physics. "Captain Chen," Lyrelay said carefully, "what exactly is your tactical assessment of our situation?" Another pause, and when the voice returned, it carried a note of grim amusement. "Ma'am, we've been monitoring Reaper communications since we arrived. Based on their tactical patterns and current force deployment, I'd estimate you have approximately 3 hours before complete planetary subjugation. However, our species has considerable experience dealing with extinction-level threats." "Experience?" Victus leaned forward. "What kind of experience?" The tactical display updated again, showing the unknown fleet moving into defensive positions around Thessia's outer atmosphere. Their formations were unlike anything Lyrelay had seen. Not the clean geometric patterns favored by council races, but organic, adaptive arrangements that seemed to flow like living tissue. Captain Chen, we need to understand who you are and where you come from, Lyralai pressed. The Council has records of all human colonies and expeditions. With respect, Ambassador, Chen's voice carried a hint of steel. Your Council's records don't extend to the places we've been. Let's just say that when your ancestors were building their first space elevators, ours were learning to fight things that would give your Reapers nightmares. The viewing deck's emergency lighting flickered as the first Reaper scouts appeared on the outer sensor grid, massive squid-like forms that moved through space with predatory grace, their weapons already charging for long-range bombardment. Incoming transmission from Lead Reaper vessel, Tally reported, her voice tight with fear. The holographic display shifted, showing the cyclopean form of a Reaper capital ship. Its voice, when it came, was the sound of civilizations dying, harmonized tones that spoke of inevitable extinction. We are the harbinger of your perfection. Your biological distinctiveness will be preserved. Resistance is futile. Before anyone in the command center could respond, Captain Chen's voice cut across the channel with casual disrespect. Yeah, we've heard that speech before. It wasn't impressive the first time. The Reaper's response was immediate and violent. Lance-like beams of red energy erupted from its forward batteries, targeting the unknown human ships with the fury of a god. The weapons struck their targets dead on and simply vanished against energy shields that flared with brilliant white light. All units, weapons free, Chen commanded with the calm of someone ordering coffee. Let's show these mechanical parasites how we handle pest control where we come from. The response was immediate and terrifying in its implications. The human ships opened fire with weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself. Streams of exotic matter and coherent energy beams lanced across the void, not merely damaging the Reaper scouts but unmaking them at a fundamental level. Lyralai watched in stunned silence as one of the smaller Reaper vessels, a destroyer-class unit that could have leveled a city, simply ceased to exist as the human weapons touched it. Not destroyed, not blown apart, but erased as if it had never been. "My goddess," she whispered. "Captain Chen," Victus spoke into the comm, his voice carefully controlled. "What exactly are your people?" The response carried a note of dark humor. "Commander, when your people finally venture into the deep galaxy, I mean really deep, past the Magellanic clouds, beyond the spiral arms, into the places where space itself gets hostile, you'll understand. We're what humans become when they have to adapt to survive in a universe that actively tries to kill them." Through the viewing deck's transparasteel, Lyralai could see the battle unfolding in the space above Thessia. More Reaper vessels were emerging from FTL, their massive forms blotting out stars. But for every Reaper that appeared, the human ships responded with coordinated precision that spoke of long experience fighting impossible odds. "All civilian transports, this is Admiral Chen aboard the UES Indomitable. Proceed to designated safe zones and await further instructions. Military vessels, form up on our coordinates for joint tactical operations." The tide of refugee ships began to shift, moving toward the protective umbrella of the mysterious human fleet. Lyralai realized she was watching something unprecedented, the first time in recorded galactic history that someone had made the Reapers hesitate. "Ambassador," Tally said quietly, "whatever these humans are, wherever they come from, they're buying us time we desperately needed." Lyralai nodded, her mind racing with implications. If these humans could stand against the Reapers, what did that mean for the galaxy? What had they endured in their distant corner of space to become what they were now? The battle above intensified as more Reaper capital ships arrived, their weapon systems charging for a coordinated assault. But the human fleet moved like a living organism, ships flowing between formations with an almost organic grace. Their weapons continued to fire with devastating precision, each shot calculated for maximum effect. "This is impossible," Victus murmured. watching as a human destroyer somehow outmaneuvered a Reaper capital ship 10 times its size. No one fights like this. No one has weapons like this. Captain Chen's voice came over the comm again, now directed specifically at the command center. Ambassador Lyra Lai, Commander Victus, we need to coordinate ground defense preparations. Our orbital support can handle the fleet engagement, but if any Reapers make planetfall, you'll need infantry capable of dealing with indoctrinated forces. We have what military forces we could muster, Lyra Lai replied, but our evacuation protocols have priority. Understood. We're deploying our own ground elements shortly. Fair warning, our Marines might seem unconventional compared to your standard forces. They're adapted for combat in hostile environments. The conversation was interrupted by a massive explosion visible through the viewing deck's windows. One of the larger Reaper vessels had attempted to ram a human ship, only to discover that the human vessel's hull was apparently harder than whatever exotic materials the Reapers were constructed from. As Lyra Lai watched the battle unfold, she realized that everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare, about technology, about survival itself, was about to change. These mysterious humans from the deep galaxy had arrived with capabilities that bordered on the impossible. The question now wasn't whether they could survive the Reaper invasion. It was what would happen to the galaxy when this was all over, and these powerful strangers decided what role they wanted to play in galactic civilization. Above them, the battle raged on, but for the first time since the Reapers had arrived, Lyra Lai allowed herself to hope. They sent an SOS to Allies, Part 2. The first human transport to land in Thessia City's main plaza looked like it had been through a war before arriving. Its hull was a patchwork of reinforced plates, each one telling a story of battles fought in conditions that would have destroyed conventional ships. Steam hissed from cooling vents as the massive doors slid open with a sound like thunder. Ambassador Lyra Lai stood with a mixed crowd of Asari civilians and military personnel, all straining to get their first glimpse of the mysterious humans who had appeared from deep space like something out of ancient myths. The refugees pressed closer, their children clinging to makeshift toys and family heirlooms, eyes wide with curiosity and fear. What emerged from the transport defied every expectation they'd harbored about their distant human cousins. The first figure to step onto Thessian soil was clearly human in basic structure, but the similarities ended there. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, wearing armor that seemed to be grown rather than manufactured, the soldier moved with predatory grace that reminded Lyra Lai uncomfortably of the Rachni warriors from historical vids. The armor itself was black as void space, with organic-looking joints and what appeared to be living circuitry pulsing beneath its surface. Behind the first soldier came others, each one a testament to humanity's adaptation to environments that pushed the boundaries of survival. Some showed signs of genetic modification, so extensive they bordered on speciation. Enhanced muscle mass that bulged against their armor, reinforced bone structure visible beneath synthetic skin, and eyes that reflected light like those of nocturnal predators. "Welcome to Thessia," Lyra Lai said formally, stepping forward despite the nervous murmurs from the crowd behind her. "I'm Ambassador Lyra Lai. We're grateful for your assistance." The lead soldier removed their helmet, revealing a woman who might have been beautiful by human standards, if not for the surgical scars that mapped her face like a road network. Her hair was white as starlight, and her eyes held depths that spoke of horrors witnessed and survived. When she smiled, it revealed teeth that had been replaced with what looked like sharpened metal. "Captain Maria Santos, 3rd Expeditionary Marine Division," she said, her voice carrying accents that suggested languages that had evolved far from galactic standard. "Don't worry about the appearances, Ambassador. We know we look rough around the edges, but we're here to help." Commander Victus approached cautiously, his mandibles twitching as his tactical mind processed what he was seeing. "Captain, your soldiers appear to be..." enhanced beyond standard human parameters. Santos laughed, a sound that carried genuine warmth despite its harsh edge. Commander, where we come from, standard human parameters stopped being relevant about 6 centuries ago. When you're fighting ecosystem-sized predators on worlds where the gravity tries to crush you and the atmosphere wants to dissolve your bones, evolution becomes a team sport. More soldiers continued to disembark, and with each one, the crowd's amazement grew. These weren't just enhanced humans, they were living weapons, each adapted for specific combat roles in ways that spoke of genetic engineering taken to artistic levels. Some were clearly optimized for stealth, their skin able to shift color like chameleons. Others were built for assault, with arms that could probably punch through starship hulls. "How many of your people are there?" Lyralai asked, trying to wrap her mind around the implications. "On the expedition? About 2 million, like Admiral Chen said," Santos replied, directing her soldiers to establish a defensive perimeter with movements so coordinated they might as well have been telepathic. "Back home? Hard to say. We stopped counting populations after the first billion. Numbers get fuzzy when you're spread across 17 galaxies." Victus's mandibles clicked audibly. 17 galaxies? "Give or take," Santos said casually, as if discussing the weather. "The Milky Way was getting a bit cramped after we finished dealing with the Devourer swarms. Plus, once you figure out how to navigate dark space safely, exploration becomes addictive." A young Asari child, no more than 50 years old by their appearance, broke away from her mother's grip and approached one of the human soldiers. This one was clearly a heavy weapons specialist, with arms that had been replaced by what looked like living artillery pieces. Yet when the child reached up tentatively, the massive warrior knelt down and spoke in gentle tones. "It's okay, little one," the soldier said, their voice modulated through a Vox unit that translated perfectly into Asari tonal patterns. "We're the good guys. I promise." The child giggled and touched the soldier's armor, which immediately shifted color to match her dress, a small kindness that spoke volumes about the humanity that remained beneath all the modifications. "Your soldiers seem different from what we expected," Lyralai observed. Santos nodded understanding. "Ambassador, let me tell you something about where we come from. Imagine the most hostile environment your people have ever encountered. Maybe a Class 4 death world with aggressive fauna and unstable weather patterns. Now multiply that by 1,000 and add malevolent intelligence that actively hunts sentient species for sport." She gestured toward the sky, where the battle between human ships and reapers continued to rage. "We've been fighting things like your mechanical friends up there for longer than most civilizations have existed. The difference is, the things we fight don't just want to harvest us, they want to torture the concept of existence itself." Talizora approached with her Omni tool active, scanning the human equipment with undisguised fascination. "Captain, I'm reading energy signatures from your gear that shouldn't be possible with known physics. How do you power weapons of this magnitude?" Santos smiled grimly and tapped a spot on her armor where Lyralai could now see a small, pulsing, organ-like structure. "Zero-point extraction directly from quantum foam, channeled through bioengineered symbiotic organisms. Every soldier is essentially a walking fusion reactor with a consciousness." That should be lethal," Tali whispered, her environmental suit's sensors going crazy. "It was for the first few thousand volunteers," Santos admitted. "But we got better at it. Evolution, like I said, it's a team sport when extinction is the alternative." The ground beneath their feet vibrated as something massive impacted the planet's surface several kilometers away. Through the city's atmospheric processors, they could hear the distinctive sound of Reaper forces beginning their ground assault. "Husks," Victus said grimly, recognizing the telltale signals on his tactical display. "Reaper ground forces, probably supported by brutes and banshees. Standard harvest protocol." Santos nodded and activated a communication device that seemed to be grown into her wrist. Admiral, we have confirmation of Reaper ground deployment, requesting permission for full tactical engagement. Captain Chen's voice came through crystal clear. Permission granted, Captain. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Show them what humans look like when we're annoyed. The transformation of the human soldiers was immediate and terrifying. What had appeared to be individual warriors suddenly moved as a single organism. Their enhanced minds clearly linked through some form of technological telepathy. Weapons that had been disguised as armor components revealed themselves as instruments of destruction that belonged in science fiction rather than reality. Ambassador, Santos said, her manner suddenly all business, I need you and your people to evacuate to the designated safe zones. What's about to happen here isn't going to be pretty, and we work better without worrying about civilian casualties. We can fight, Victus protested. Turian forces are trained for urban combat. Against Reapers, sure, Santos agreed. But we're not just fighting Reapers anymore. We're fighting them the way my people learned to fight. No rules, no mercy, no prisoners. Your people aren't ready for that kind of war. As if to emphasize her point, the distant sound of combat suddenly shifted. The mechanical whirring of Reaper weapons was joined by sounds that made Lyrali's blood run cold. Something that sounded like a fusion of animal roars and mechanical screaming, as if the humans had brought weapons that were somehow alive. What was that? Lyrali asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Bioweapons, Santos explained matter-of-factly. We learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to fight monsters is to make bigger monsters that are on your side. Don't worry, they're perfectly safe around friendlies. It's enemies they get creative with. The evacuation proceeded with remarkable efficiency, human soldiers working alongside Asari and Turian forces to guide civilians to safety. Despite their fearsome appearance, the modified humans showed incredible gentleness with non-combatants, especially children. Several times, Lyralay saw massive warriors pause their preparations to help frightened families or carry elderly Asari who couldn't keep up. Captain Santos, Lyralay said as they reached the evacuation point, after this is over, we need to talk about your people's place in galactic civilization. Santos paused in checking her weapon systems. With respect, Ambassador, I'm not sure there's going to be much left of your current galactic civilization after this. The Reapers aren't just a threat to individual species. They're a symptom of something much worse. Where we come from, we call it the hunger between stars. It's what drives species like the Reapers to consume everything they encounter. You're saying there are more threats like this? I'm saying the Reapers are the least of your problems, Santos replied grimly. They're basically scavenger fish compared to the real predators out there. But don't worry. That's why we're here. When we received your distress call, our leadership decided it was time to extend our protective umbrella to this part of the galaxy. The sound of approaching Reaper forces grew louder, accompanied by the distinctive hum of indoctrinated troops moving in formation. But instead of fear, Lyralai felt a strange sense of anticipation. For the first time in the war, they had allies who seemed genuinely confident about their chances. How do you know you can win? She asked. Santos finished her equipment check and looked up with a smile that was equal parts reassuring and predatory. Ambassador, my people have been fighting extinction-level threats since before your species learned to use fire. We've turned warfare into an art form, survival into a science, and evolution into a weapon. The Reapers may have harvested thousands of civilizations, but they've never faced humans who had to learn to fight the gods themselves. The first Reaper ground units appeared at the city's perimeter, shambling husks that had once been living beings, now twisted into weapons of harvesting. Behind them came the larger forms of brutes and banshees, their mechanical screams echoing through the empty streets. But as they advanced, something impossible happened. The very ground beneath them began to change. flowing like liquid while maintaining its solid properties. Buildings shifted position, creating kill zones and defensive positions with organic precision. The city itself was fighting back. "Nanotechnology?" Victus asked in amazement. "Better," Santos replied. "Living architecture. We learned that sometimes the best defense is to make your environment part of your army. Every building, every street, every piece of infrastructure in this sector is now actively hostile to Reaper forces." The first wave of husks hit the city's new defenses and simply vanished, absorbed into walls that digested them at a molecular level. The larger Reaper units attempted to adapt, but found themselves facing an environment that changed faster than they could process. "This is just the beginning," Santos said, watching as her fellow soldiers took positions that seemed to have been custom-made for each individual fighter. "Wait until you see what happens when we really get started." Above them, the space battle had intensified as more human ships arrived through the relay network. But these weren't just reinforcements. They were mobile factories, support vessels that began deploying orbital platforms and energy weapons that turned the space around Thessia into a fortress. "Captain Chen to all ground units," came the Admiral's voice over the communication system. "We've just received word from Citadel Command. The Reaper main fleet is redirecting toward Earth. Apparently, our presence here has been classified as a more significant threat than the entire Alliance Navy." Santos laughed with genuine delight. "Outstanding. Time to show these mechanical parasites what happens when they threaten the homeworld of any human subspecies." As Lyrelay watched from the safety of the evacuation zone, she realized that the galaxy had just witnessed the opening moves of a conflict that would reshape everything they thought they knew about warfare, technology, and the very nature of survival in a hostile universe. The humans from the deep galaxy weren't just here to help. They were here to demonstrate that evolution, when pushed to its absolute limits, could produce miracles that bordered on magic. They sent an SOS to allies, Part 3. The council chambers aboard the Citadel had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. Ambassador Lyrelay stood at the central podium, addressing representatives from every major species in the galaxy. While behind her, holographic displays showed the impossible: Earth's surface, green and blue, and completely free of Reaper presence. "The final phase of Operation Shepherd's Gambit concluded 72 hours ago," she reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was describing. "The Reaper invasion force has been completely neutralized, not defeated, not driven back, eliminated." Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. The Solarian counselor's large eyes blinked rapidly as he processed data streams on his Omni tool. "Ambassador Lyrelay, our intelligence confirms the disappearance of all Reaper signatures throughout the galaxy. However, the methods employed by these enhanced humans remain unclear." The Turian counselor leaned forward, his scarred mandibles clicking with controlled agitation. "What we've seen defies every principle of physics and military strategy. These humans didn't just defeat the Reapers, they erased them from existence as if they never existed." Lyrelay nodded, remembering the final hours of the conflict. After the successful defense of Thessia, Admiral Chen had done something unprecedented. She had issued a challenge directly to the Reaper collective consciousness, broadcasting on all frequencies across the galaxy. The message had been simple: "You want to harvest Earth? Come and try." What followed had been less a battle than a demonstration. The entire Reaper armada, hundreds of capital ships representing the accumulated might of countless extinct civilizations, had converged on humanity's homeworld. Every military strategist in the galaxy had predicted total annihilation. Earth's defenses, even with Alliance reinforcements, couldn't possibly stand against such overwhelming force. They had been wrong about everything. "The recording from Earth's orbital stations shows the impossibility of what occurred," Lyrelay continued, activating the holographic display. "When the Reaper fleet arrived, they encountered not just human ships, but the planet itself fighting back. The display showed Earth as the delegates had never seen it. Not the embattled world struggling with Reaper attacks they had known about, but something that pulsed with barely contained power. The oceans themselves had risen up as weapons, water transformed into exotic matter that could pierce Reaper armor like paper. The continents had bristled with weapons that grew from the planet's crust like living things, each one targeting Reaper vessels with perfect precision. The humans didn't just terraform Earth, Lyreley explained, her voice filled with awe even now. They made it into the ultimate weapon. Every molecule of air, every drop of water, every grain of soil, all of it was turned into a defensive system that treated the Reapers as a viral infection to be eliminated. The Asari counselor, ancient even by their species' standards, spoke with trembling voice. "Ambassador, what you're describing sounds like the humans transformed their entire homeworld into a living weapon. The energy requirements alone should have made such a thing impossible." "That's what we thought too," Lyreley replied, until Captain Santos explained their power source. The recording shifted to show the moment when the Reaper flagship, Harbinger itself, had attempted to land on Earth's surface. The massive dreadnought, kilometers in length and armed with weapons that could glass planets, had touched down on what appeared to be an ordinary grassland in North America. What happened next had redefined everyone's understanding of the word impossible. The ground had simply opened up and swallowed the ship, not like a sinkhole, but like a mouth. The entire landscape had revealed itself to be a single massive organism, one that treated Reaper technology as nothing more than nutrients to be absorbed and converted. "The humans call it the synthesis," Lyreley continued. "Over the centuries of fighting extinction-level threats, they merged their technology with their biology so completely that the distinction became meaningless. Their cities are alive. Their ships are grown. Their weapons think for themselves, and their planet is basically a conscious entity that has been trained to defend itself." The Volus representative wheezed through his environmental suit. "Economic implications? Unprecedented. If humans can manufacture matter at will, convert energy directly from quantum foam, grow starships like crops—" "That's just the beginning," Lyreley interrupted gently. "Admiral Chen has requested this meeting to discuss humanity's formal integration into galactic civilization." As if summoned by her words, the chamber's main display activated, showing the bridge of the UES Indomitable. Admiral Chen appeared, still wearing her battle-scarred armor, but now flanked by advisors who looked like they belonged in different species entirely. Some showed cybernetic modifications so extensive they were more machine than flesh. Others had been altered to survive in environments that would kill unmodified humans instantly. "Council members," Chen said formally, "I apologize for not attending in person, but my ship is currently en route to investigate reports of Reaper remnants in the Andromeda Galaxy. We want to make sure this problem doesn't repeat itself." The Turian counselor struggled to maintain diplomatic composure. "Admiral Chen, while we are grateful for your assistance, the Council must express concern about humanity's apparent technological superiority. The balance of galactic power." Chen smiled, and there was something both reassuring and terrifying in her expression. "Counselor, let me be clear about something. My people didn't come here to conquer or dominate. We came because we received a distress call, and where we come from, you don't ignore calls for help." She gestured to something off-screen, and the display shifted to show what looked like a star map, but not of the Milky Way. This showed dozens of galaxies, each one marked with human settlements and defensive installations. "This is our current sphere of influence," Chen continued. 17 galaxies, roughly 3 trillion inhabited star systems, and about 400 billion human subspecies adapted for every conceivable environment. We've been doing this for a long time, Council members. We've helped more civilizations than your databases have records for. The Solarian Councilor's mathematical mind was working overtime. 400 billion subspecies implies genetic modification programs spanning millions of years. Your species should not be capable of such development in the time frame available. You're thinking linearly, Chen replied with patience that suggested she'd had this conversation before. Time moves differently when you're fighting for survival against cosmic-level threats. We learn to accelerate our evolution, compress technological development, and experience centuries of progress in decades of subjective time. Lyrelai stepped forward again. The Admiral has made a proposal that could revolutionize our understanding of galactic civilization. Chen nodded. We're offering to establish a permanent defensive presence in this galaxy, not occupation, not conquest, partnership. We'll share our defensive technologies, help you establish protection against future extinction-level events, and provide assistance in expanding to other galaxies when you're ready. And in return, the Asari counselor asked suspiciously. Nothing, Chen replied simply. This is what we do. We find civilizations that are struggling to survive, and we help them become strong enough to protect themselves and others. It's been our mission for longer than some stars have existed. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. These humans weren't invaders or conquerors. They were gardeners on a cosmic scale, nurturing younger civilizations until they could stand on their own. There is one condition, Chen added, her expression growing serious. Any species that accepts our protection must commit to the same principle. When you encounter civilizations that need help, you help them. When you grow strong enough to defend others, you do so. The universe is a hostile place, but it doesn't have to be a lonely one. Commander Victus appeared on a secondary display from Palaven. Admiral, speaking as someone who's seen your capabilities firsthand, I have to ask, what convinced your people to take on this responsibility? Chen's smile turned sad, and for a moment the weight of eons showed in her eyes. Commander, my people learned the hard way what happens when civilizations face extinction alone. We lost our first galaxy to things that make the Reapers look like children's toys. We swore that would never happen again. Not to us, not to anyone else. The recording shifted again, showing the aftermath of the battle for Earth. Where the Reaper fleet had been, there was now only empty space. Not debris, not wreckage, just void where the invaders had been completely unmade. But surrounding Earth were thousands of new ships, each one unique in design but clearly human in origin. These are the Gardener fleets, Chen explained. Every human subspecies contributes ships and personnel to the collective defense. We've been building this force for millennia, preparing for the day when we might find civilizations worth protecting. Talizora appeared on another display, her environmental suit gleaming with new modifications. Council members, I've been working with human engineers for the past week. Their technology isn't just advanced, it's alive, adaptive, empathetic. They've created machines that understand emotion, weapons that refuse to harm innocents, ships that mourn their fallen crews. Most importantly, Chen added, we've developed defenses against the real threats out there. The Reapers were just scouts, council members. The things that sent them are still out there, waiting in dark space. But now this galaxy has protection. The Solarian counselor looked up from his calculations. Admiral, the economic and technological implications of your offer would fundamentally alter galactic civilization. The social changes alone will happen gradually, Chen assured him. We're not here to force evolution. We're here to provide options, protection, and time for natural development. Some species will adapt quickly, others will take centuries. Both approaches are valid. Lyrelai looked around the chamber at faces representing hundreds of worlds, billions of lives, all struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what was being offered. The Admiral's people have already begun establishing defensive installations at key points throughout the galaxy. Pirates, slavers, and other hostile forces are discovering that their activities are no longer tolerated. We've also begun negotiations with the Terminus systems, Chen added. Turns out when you offer genuine protection and support for development, most species are eager to cooperate rather than fight. The meeting continued for hours, with technical specialists, military advisors, and diplomatic corps from every major species asking questions about humanity's capabilities, intentions, and long-term goals. Through it all, Chen and her advisors displayed the patience of teachers dealing with eager students. As the session drew to a close, the Asari counselor posed the question that had been on everyone's mind. Admiral Chen, what assurance do we have that your people won't eventually view us as subjects rather than allies? Chen's expression grew thoughtful, and she gestured to something off-screen again. The display shifted to show a vast space station orbiting what appeared to be a pulsar, a facility so massive it could have housed entire fleets. This is Sanctuary 1, our primary command facility, she explained. It's staffed by representatives from over 6,000 different species, all of them civilizations we've helped reach this level of development. They make the decisions about resource allocation, defensive priorities, and expansion protocols. My people provide the ships and the soldiers, but the direction comes from the collective wisdom of every species we've partnered with. She smiled again, and this time there was genuine warmth in her expression. Council members, we learned long ago that diversity is strength. Every species offers unique perspectives, solutions to problems we might never have considered, beauty that enriches existence for everyone. We're not here to create an empire. We're here to help build a community. The final vote was unanimous. The Galactic Council formally accepted the Terran Protectorate's offer of partnership and protection. Within months, human advisors were working with every major species, sharing technologies and techniques that had been refined across eons of cosmic warfare. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy had gained something it had never truly possessed before. Hope. The knowledge that extinction was not inevitable, that civilizations could grow beyond their individual limitations, that the universe contained wonders worth protecting and entities willing to do the protecting. As Ambassador Lirale watched the first Joint Human Council patrol depart for the Outer Rim, she reflected on how a simple distress call had fundamentally changed everything. They had asked for allies and received guardians, beings who had transcended the limitations of individual species to become something greater. The age of isolation was over. The age of community had begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, other civilizations struggling with their own extinction events would eventually receive their own impossible answer to desperate prayers. Help was coming. It always was, for those who had the courage to ask for it.